We live in a fast-paced and hectic world where it's easy to feel overwhelmed, stressed, and out of control. How do you manage all the competing pressures without losing sense of yourself? How do you stay focused enough to not only plot a path, but follow it? Welcome to Master Your Life, a show that offers inspiration, insight, and intelligence, as well as success stories from many walks of life that can show you how you can control your own destiny. Our knowledgeable and entertaining host and her guests give practical advice that you can use every day in the quest to master your life. Now, here's your host, Leaha Mattinson.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. I'm host Leaha Mattinson. I want to say, first of all, thank you for wherever it is that you are in this beautiful planet tuning in to find out more inspiration, insight, and wisdom to help you to live a healthier, happier, wealthier life. And today's guest, I'm really excited to bring to the audience once again. He was introduced to me because I had a friend that got a hold of me who actually does research for Master Your Life around the areas of health. And she called me and said, Leaha, you've got to meet this guy and read his work, because she was working on healing her thyroid condition. And so I then was introduced to August Dunning, who we've had on the show already one time for an episode about his book on dry fasting, which for those of you who are tuning in on audio, I'd encourage you to come on over to the video version of this on the masteryourlife.ca website, or you can check it out on the YouTube channel, because I want you to see August and see the shining example he is of the lifestyle that he is living. And so I think that's really important for people to get eyes on our mentors these days, more so now than ever. So we talked lots about the Phoenix Protocol in the last interview. And for those of you who've been regular listeners over the past 6 or 7 years, you know that we've been talking a lot about neurological health and overall health and well-being. Dealing not just with chronic illnesses, but just getting ahead of symptoms. So really, for the wellness seeker, how do you actually be well? Not just for people who are trying to deal with really complex issues. But again, that's why I was interested in having August on the show, because he has some modalities for approaching health and lifestyle that really can help you to exponentially get well. So August, welcome. August Dunning, welcome back to the show.
Nice to be here.
So can you give the listeners who haven't heard of you a little bit of a preamble or a background story on who you are and how you got into the work that you're currently doing?
Well, my dad was a doctor, and that was inspirational. And he was into obstetrics, so he loved delivering babies.
Yeah.
I was going into medicine. We had to talk about the future of medicine and going into basically what it is now. And he said it was going to ruin the art. And he probably was right on that one. And I thought, okay, I'll just get into science instead, because without the hospital fees, the office staff, the malpractice insurance, and all the other fees you have to pay to be a doctor, I could just make the same in engineering. And I did, and I have been. So I worked in art and science and invention and all that kind of stuff. Worked for NASA on the space station program. Did a lot of cool stuff.
Yes, again, tune in on the video version so you can see the cool stuff. Yes.
And it's funny too, because they talk about the Russian engines that now Elon Musk is going to be, replacing on our flights up at the station. And that is an RD-180 from Russia when I was with Pratt & Whitney, who was supplying those to LA. Anyway, so did a lot of fun stuff. Then I got into to health. I've always been into it mostly. Met my partner who's really into it, and just started digging in. And that's the way you do it. You find a path and you go on it. And I ran across the works of Filanov and Shishnikov, these Russian dry fasting doctors, and read what they were doing to heal all these really serious illnesses, catastrophic illnesses within just 11 days of a dry fast. I don't do 11s, I do 7s. But then I thought, well, wait a minute. What if we use the amazing regenerative, potential for this therapy in longevity? What happens when you're not sick and you give yourself one of these therapies? And that's kind of where I've been going with this. The idea of the Phoenix Protocol is not to heal major illness. A lot of stuff will be solved just out of hand. That's just the way this therapy works. But it turns on stem cells, and it turns on your ability to regenerate broken tissue. It's an anti-inflammatory, gets rid of parasites and viruses and all this other jazz in the body, and especially your toxins. And when I found this stuff out, I thought, man, that's really the key here, because it's this toxic load that we accumulate over a lifetime that is really the aging. That's the stuff that causes aging. That's the death chemicals. And when you get rid of this stuff, you end up without that stuff dragging down your body. Inflammation is this long-term chronic inflammation that makes everything else work harder. And eventually some system just fails and you drop over. You know, I made the comment in my second book, what if young people are young because they're living in a young body? I mean, it's absurd, okay? But at the same time, they don't have the accumulation of these toxins and debris and chemicals and all this stuff. And so we've never as a species been able to attain that state of cleanliness in our adult years. That's what I'm doing. And I sleep great. I'm 70. I run around, I surf, I do all this crazy stuff. I'm studying all the time. I'm gardening all the time. It's like I have plenty of energy because I'm careful with my mitochondria, of course. And that's a lot of the key to it. Activating your sirtuins with NAD and running all the stuff in the cells correctly, and then fasting every year to get rid of the stuff. And I found out this really works. And I was, quite frankly, I was a little, worried about it first. And but I had this nose problem. I had lost my sense of smell when I was exposed to this hot blue pipe adhesive to put PVC piping together. I was in a room with bad ventilation. I lost my sense of smell. It burned out my epithelial neural endings on my nose, inside my nose. And 3 years, nothing worked. I did salt rinses, medicines, all the stuff, saw all these doctors, and food tastes terrible when you can't smell the food. Right? And I said, well, what have I got to lose here? So I went on a dry fast. In 3 days, I got my sense of smell back, which means it regenerates neurological tissue. That's incredible. Because when you do a dry fast, you set your body into motion to get rid of senescent cells and regenerate new cells. And you end up a whole new crop of mitochondria. And you have with a whole new crop of energy producing cells. And that's the key here. So that's kind of where I got into it, just, trial and error, found it myself, it worked, got really into it, wrote a book, and then realized that dry fasting does a lot. It's not a panacea for everything. You still got to exercise and eat well, which is the nature of the second book. So that's kind of my background. I was a scientist, into medicine, still into medicine. At 8 years old, my dad gave me the Hippocratic Oath. So by definition, because only a doctor can give you the oath, I'm a doctor. Maybe not a medical doctor for pharmaceuticals, but a physician nonetheless. And my whole life has been devoted to that. Mm-hmm. It's only 4 tenets rather. Don't divulge your patient information. Don't deal toxic drugs to kill people. Don't perform abortions, and don't perform surgeries. That's really it. Everything else, you're a physician. So, and I haven't done those things. So I suppose that's good. So I'm also, qualified as a scientist in engineering and all that kind of stuff as well. But really, when you look at it, how long do we have? And can we live longer? It's not about health span as much as about lifespan. And if you can merge the two and get rid of all this stuff and be living in a young body again. I mean, that's why kids are young, because youth isn't measured in age, it's measured in functionality. So I encourage people to try to give this thing a shot and do a dry fast, and you'll find out it's pretty darn easy. It gets a little boring. That's really all it is.
Right. And you've said so many key things right out of the chute, August. So I want to just highlight a few of those for people, because I think that people have a really entrenched idea that it takes a long time to be well. It's like everything's such a long process. It's going to take a long time to feel better. And so 7 days is one of the things that you said. Once a year was something else that you said. And the youthfulness, this improvement in youthfulness in the body are another key thing. So it's you're trying to restore youth and trying to take your body back to a more functional state. And this is kind of that life, is only worth living if you're actually feeling healthy in this body. If you're getting out of bed and you're 25 years old and you're going, ugh, everything hurts. It's like, what do you expect is going to be happening when you're 60 or 70 years old? And we're seeing progressive illness in younger and younger people. I think you and I had a distinct advantage because, I'm in my 50s. I grew up on a farm. You're in your 70s, and you grew up, understanding some things about food and nutrition. And I know you say, oh, you're just an engineer, but engineers are about re-engineering your body also. Like it's an approach to life. And so the advantage really is that, maybe we grew up with the cleaner food sources, that, just the amount of pollution in the actual food wasn't there. And so when we look at young people now, I look at my grandchildren and go, they're very conscientious, the parents, about what they feed them for the most part. But I look at their cohorts or counterparts in school and go, brain fog has already set in, old bodies, they're tired, they're exhausted, they don't have the cognitive function that they should have. So what I want people to keep in mind during this episode and really to contemplate is not only just for yourself, how could this information help you to feel better, but then also how could it kind of trickle and ripple down into your family or the people that to help them to feel better. But through your inspirational changing maybe of the things that you're doing in your own body, but also to effectively be able to coach and guide and mentor and give people information. So even if you don't feel like you're capable of sharing the information in the episode, encourage people to come and listen. Right. I know sometimes you can't be a prophet in your own village, but you can get people to come and listen and tune in. So thank you, August, for all of those. That's really helpful when people think they can turn around a really serious condition in 7 days. Let's talk about mitochondria, because I know you're really working on that. About 14 years ago, when I first got my genetic status for Huntington's disease, that was what I dove into, was fasting, not dry fasting, but fasting, because that was one of the things that improved brain health right away. And also, like immediately. And then, so the quality of food that we feed ourselves, but also the idea of having this really juicy, well-functioning, huge, vibey, good mitochondria in our cells, and that our cells just look incredible. So everyone can flash back to, grade 10 biology as we carry on, because people knew what a cell looked like at that time. We learned that stuff, so this might be reaching back into the history books for a lot of people, but let's pick up on what do we know about mitochondria today, because this is a deep area of research for you. Yeah.
Let me give you a quick, one more thing before I jump into that.
Sure. Sounds good.
The thing is with dry fasting is it gets rid of like decades of debris in cells. I mean, you get this orange goo that you crap out. I know it sounds gross, but that's the death you're getting rid of, okay? And because you do that, you can't accumulate another 50, 60, 70 years of debris in a year. It's like you empty the cart and the horse doesn't have to carry much weight anymore. I mean, really, it is that simple. And it's been known that these toxins are extremely affecting mutagenic behavior in cells. We know that cancers are from irritation more than anything else. So when you get rid of the irritants, even if you have predispositions, you don't get the triggers to turn on those predispositions. That's the cool thing about it. But as far as the mitochondria go, it's really the linchpin in all this stuff. I mean, you have three ways to get food into mitochondria: sugars, you got proteins, you got fats. And the thing about fat that's interesting, free fatty acids, for instance, is that you produce 110 grams of water for 100 grams of fat metabolized. So you have a positive pressure in the cells of water-producing cells that's flushing your cell out during a dry fast. That's the most amazing thing about it, because you're going to keep urinating even when you're not drinking. You're like a quart a day, because your body is converting fat into energy and ketones and all this good stuff, and lots of water. I mean, sugar is only like 60 per 100 grams. Proteins are like 30 per 100 grams. Fat is 110 per 100 grams. So fat is a really great fuel. It makes lots of water. It keeps you hydrated. Now, the mitochondria are really interesting, because the mitochondria work on these food sources, and they clip up these free fatty acids and these glycerol chains and stuff into the citric acid cycle to make NAD and NADH and FAD and FADH, and these are used in the electron transport chain to make energy. Now, what's interesting is people don't realize, we see these Disney pictures of the cell with a couple of mitochondria, the endoplasmic reticulum and a lysosome. It's not like that at all. The average cell has like 500 mitochondria. That's not counting brown fat, which is made for heat. The female egg 100 to 600,000 mitochondria per cell. With sperm, 50 or 60 mitochondria is a ring around the head that makes the tail flip. That's where it gets the energy to flip the tail. So if you're in a mitochondria in your sperm, you have low motility. Kidneys, 2,000 per cell. The liver, 5,000 per cell. Muscle, 10,000 per cell, like the heart muscle. And the area of the brain that controls motor control and dopamine, 2 million mitochondria per cell. And these organs, we all know that the eyes and the brain take most of the oxygen, 20 to 25, 30% of the oxygen of the body goes to the brain and the eyes, because it takes a lot of mitochondria to produce the ATP to make these photoreceptors and these signals. And for brain function, because all these mitochondria in the brain. So the real thing here is the mitochondria. You can tell by oxygen use. So and you need oxygen to produce ATP. It's part of the cycle, the five-step cycle. So when you think about what life is all about, you need to exercise. Exercise makes new muscle tissue. So when you have a cell divide and create a new cell, there's more mitochondria, and you have more energy. I see these older folks my age and older, they're just barely able to walk around. It's pathetic. I feel so bad for them. I can't go up and say, "Oh, you should drive fast." No, I can't do that, because they wouldn't know what I'm doing. I think I'm a nut. But I feel sorry for them, because they've been taught the wrong stuff. They've been convinced that there's enough nutrition in food to feed them without supplements. And that's not true, because you have to have a therapeutic dose of things to have them actually work. And the reality is they don't realize that we don't face a climate crisis. We face a habitat crisis. Microplastics in the ocean, in the food chain. We have all these toxins and these chemicals in the land and the sea and all this stuff. And that's what we're fighting. So to have dry fasting available, to just dump that stuff at least once a year, you'll never accumulate the amount of debris and toxic chemicals to interrupt your metabolic function. You need to have really good, healthy metabolism. And that's what the dry fasting does. If you can't do a 7, do a 5. You might not have as many stem cells that'll be released, but you'll get rid of a lot of the debris, and you don't have a lot of recovery with a 5-day dry fast. So with a 7-day, you got to take 2 or 3 days to get the stomach lining ready for food again, and with bone broth and proper, stuff like coconut water and potassium, magnesium, sodium to get your cellular electrolytes up, so you have good function. You don't get edema, this refeeding syndrome that a lot of people fall into because they don't exit the fast correctly. But yeah, the whole idea here is to get into this thing, regenerate your cells. Yeah, dry fasting upregulates NAD+, which upregulates the sirtuins, and it causes mitochondria biogenesis. It makes more mitochondria in your cells. Right. So when you look at it as a whole, it's something we probably did for millions of years. There was feast and famine, and every night. I don't think you're drinking while you're sleeping, and you're not eating, certainly. So you're dry fasting every night. We just don't have it long enough at night to do all the good that it could do if you have that extended sleep metabolism, which is what dry fasting is.
Yeah, and I think it's really confusing for people too, August, because there's so much information out there about intermittent fasting, and there's just lots of confusion. So people will select the thing that they feel like is the least painless or that they can really understand. And when you're not in good health, you've got brain fog. And so even the cognitive ability to consider doing something that is like a dry fast is often beyond the person. They're just kind of going, what? What did he say? Did he just say not what? To sleep? And
I'm very sensitive to that. I really am.
Right.
Because OMAD, 1 meal a day, keeps you in autophagy a little longer. That's good, because that's what you're doing when you sleep. You're in autophagy. That's the cycle that cleans everything up and changes things and gets rid of stuff. Intermittent fasting is a good idea because it gives you less of an insulin pulse. If you're not eating all the time, these huge meals, and you're just doing a little bit of fasting and then eating and then fasting, you're working within the Randall cycle. The Randall cycle is something a lot of people don't talk about these days. This is a cycle that selectively, depending on your initial nutritional status, selectively either uses fat in the muscles for energy or uses sugar in the muscles for energy. It's just a normal thing, and this is what dry fasting does. It's a perfect transition to the Randall cycle into fat, because when you're not drinking water, you're not stimulating the osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus to release the releasing factors in pituitary to release epinephrine. Okay. And if you don't drink water, that doesn't happen. Without epinephrine, you can't stimulate the lipase and the fat cells to cleave these triglycerides into free fatty acids and glycerol to make your plasma glucose from the glycerol, and your free fatty acids for ketones and energy in the ATP process, because that's what the mitochondria is doing. They're only taking these cleaved up fatty acids, no matter how you get them, from glycerol or from proteins or from fat, into energy. And that's the problem. When you drink water, you don't get that signal. So the fat cells are not really stimulated to give up the fat. Instead, because you're starving, your body has to use something, and it goes to protein. Because you're not taking any sugars, you're not getting many fats, so it has to use protein to make energy, and it starts dissolving your muscle tissue, your skeletal muscle, your heart muscle, your organ proteins. You get alanine, which is a critical ketogenic amino acid. So when you look at the water dieting, because it's not really fasting, it's water dieting, you're starving the body of food, you're forcing the body to use its own protein because you're fully hydrated. I mean, yeah, you think drinking water will help you, but it really doesn't when you're trying to fast. But
Is this really similar to that? It's like I've heard one recently, the celery juice diet or something, where people are just drinking celery juice. I mean, I think the stock in celery went through the roof because everyone was on this thing. Is that a similar
in a sense, I mean, these mono diets aren't good either because it doesn't deliver the stuff you need. You know, during the week, you've got to eat a wide variety of foodstuffs. You know, these mono diets, very selective diets, makes you deficient in certain minerals, especially zinc and things like that. And your zinc and copper are extremely important for metabolic function, especially copper for the mitochondria. Mm-hmm. The cytochrome enzyme in the chain, the ATP chain, is completely dependent on copper. And then if you don't have enough copper, you start accumulating iron. And I've done my blood tests, and I have an accumulation of iron. So I give blood every 2 or 3 months to decrease my amount of iron. Because we get older, we're not processing it properly because my copper status is incorrect, which I'm also trying to fix, like chicken liver and stuff like that. So, you know, it's really a matter of when you eat, what you eat, how much you eat, and every now and then just don't eat anything. Like Hippocrates says, sometimes the best cure is to do nothing.
Right. And that's a really good route to go for people who right now are going, the cupboard might be a little bare. So it's also, to your point, a survival, tool. And so all joking aside, when, last year when, I think that people who pay attention to what's going on globally really go, I wonder when it's going to hit that we don't have sources of food. So getting in practice even for, kind of that.
There's that.
There's famine.
You should have your own garden. You should have your own garden. And I've seen these guys up in Nebraska and stuff dig these below ground greenhouses. So you capitalize on the 55-degree natural earth heat all the time. Just have a small cover over the top of your dugout, and you can grow orange trees in the middle of wintertime in Nebraska. So there's ways to grow food with a little bit of effort. But when you talk about prepping for right now, because we have an administration that's more like a Manchurian administration, not a Manchurian candidates.
Yes.
And we have a situation where they're causing all these problems, not something halfway across the world. It's decisions in Washington. But that's a whole different topic. Don't want to go there. All I want to say is if you're going to be prepping, if you worry about food supply, concentrate on your protein type foods because you need protein to stay alive. Proteins and carbs, okay? Fats, for sure, you need them. Avoid the seed oils, but I do like quinoa, which is all essential amino acids, and some of these other, amaranth, things like that are natural seed sources that don't have a lot of omega-5 or 6 in it. And you need omega-3 sources like a few walnuts and so forth. But for the most part, you need to focus on the protein stuff because if you don't eat enough protein, your muscles are just going to go away. You won't be able to have the energy to even find food. Mm-hmm. So remember, it's not so much the Doritos you want to stock up on, as much as the long-term storage and dried foods that will be sources of proteins for you.
Right. How do you feel about sardines for protein?
Well, I love them. I love them fresh more than in the can, but if I can't get them, I'll use the can. And you have to be very careful with cans because of the plastics sometimes they use inside the cans themselves, which means you would probably want them in water, not in oils, because oils leach the plastics out of plastics. I forget the Ocean's Planet or something like that. I like their white anchovies. I love those.
How about eggs?
Eggs are fantastic. You need like 4 eggs a day if you're a large person, 2 eggs a day if you're a small person. They've got plenty of zinc, A, B, C, and D in it. They're a perfect source of protein for the kind of bodies you need. And when you cook your eggs up, I like them soft boiled, or I like to do scrambled eggs, but you put them in the pan first and get the white forming. Don't mix everything together first. And, then pour it into the pan for scrambled. Just sort of folded eggs is what I call them.
And why is that? Why is that specifically?
Well, you don't want to mix up the proteins with the yolk, and because it makes a different compound when it cooks. So you want most of that protein kind of cooked up and ready to go when you mix them with the yolk.
Right.
But you don't really want them raw either. You want to cook the eggs. But yeah, 2 to 4 a day. Pam and I both eat. We have this great farmers market down in Stewart that these guys, a girl named Katie and another guy, I forgot his name now, but they have these grass-fed, fly larvae-fed chickens.
Yes.
They just peck around and really get the good stuff. And these eggs are dark orange like they're supposed to be, and they're really delicious. So that's the only key with the eggs is what the chickens are fed, because the chickens also feed lots of seed oils. The seed oils end up at the yolk, and the yolk will provide the wrong seed oils, omega-6, which you don't want. So it's, just little.
And are all eggs kind of created equally? So if you're getting them all from the source, that's a good clean source. So duck eggs, quail, fish, like roe, those kinds of things, would you say?
Actually, I love shad roe. I really do. I love beluga caviar. I love that stuff. Pam hates it, but I love it.
Right. Well, and this is important. I think that too is people figuring out what works for them is really important. I was laughing this morning because I was watching August's YouTube channel, and he had a video on that was like a Zen walk on the beach. So this is today. It's April 13th, 2022. And August is walking down the beach. It's beautiful. The waves are coming in, and he's just silent and enjoying this. And I'm in Alberta, Canada, and it's snowing here. So I'm watching you do your walk down the beach and just having a total laugh to myself about, oh yeah, I'm going to be out making snow angels, August. That's what I'm going to be doing.
I kind of made it from you knowing we're going to be interviewed today.
Oh, that's funny. Well, sorry, you all missed it. You're all going to miss it unless you post it.
Well, it is posted. It's posted up on my YouTube channel, the Phoenix Protocol on YouTube. So yeah, you can check it out. Yeah, I may just do some more of these. One guy said, well, hey, why don't you get your bobbing head out of there and just do a wash down the beach so we can just see the beach? Like, okay, I'll do that for you too.
Right on. That's beautiful. You know what I think though, and I want to encourage people again to come watch the video version of these podcasts and these interviews. Hold
on a second. Let me turn this thing off.
Yeah, you betcha. And the reason for that is, just wait 1 second. All right, that's good. And again, I just want to encourage everybody to come and look at the YouTube versions of these things, or come onto the website, masteryourlife.ca, because I think visually seeing people is so important, because we're like the lab rats. You've been doing your dry fasting. I was doing keto years and years ago. And so I'm loving this new information that's coming out that's actually making it a little bit easier. 15 years ago or 14 years ago, I certainly wouldn't have grown an orange tree, because, we were told don't have any fruit at all on keto. So it's a very different lifestyle, or a way of approaching actually health and healing. But I will attest to this. When I was doing the keto faithfully for 5 years without a cheat day, like not a single cheat. Now, remember, it's like I have a really high reason for doing that, because I want to be well and not have that neurological illness show up. So in that, I felt absolutely like Superwoman, just all the time. I was on all the time. And it actually got a bit annoying for people, because it was like, what is wrong with you that you're happy all the time, and that it's like you're frolicking around, and how old are you? You shouldn't be acting like that.
Your enthusiasm won.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, you can't shut it off, because to your example, it's like you are like that you're so lit by all the energy that's coming through your body that you're lit. And so when people go for these experiences of being lit in other ways, they haven't a lot of people have never experienced just being lit through lifestyle.
Yep.
And that's very empowering when you go, holy man, it's like I created this from not doing too much, except getting away for some of the stuff that isn't that great for me.
It's funny too, because I just ran across another guy that I've incorporated for years. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't even know I was doing it. When I was younger, I was doing Rolls-Royce wood refinishing for the Rolls-Royce factories in the United States. I was driving in my Toyota back to my shop. I went by a place that had a DeLorean out. I used DeLorean. So I drove in and said, I've never seen these things. So I sat in that car and I wanted that car really bad. And he said, well, it's a used car. You have to buy it, cash. I said, well, here's $1,000. Hold on to it for a month. He goes, okay, but it's ours if. And I go, fine. So I cranked back the seat of my Toyota and I pretended I was in my DeLorean. I was every morning, I'd imagine, just visualize that stuff. And in a month, my account sent me so much money. I came in with the full amount and just bought it outright. I didn't realize that you build a bridge to where you want to go, back to where you are. And that Neville says, you imagine and so does Esther Hicks and the Abraham character and all these guys. They talk about you have to imagine the joy of already having it. You already have it. And that's the joy of doing it. And so now I found out that the way you do that the best is right before you go to sleep. Right before you go to sleep. So people pray before they go to sleep, now lay me down to rest, blah, blah, blah. You don't pray. What you do, if you want to attain things, you imagine very strongly being where you want to be, having the joy of attaining that, and focus on that as you fall asleep. Just do, it was hard at first, because I deflected all these other thoughts and stuff. But once I start focusing on this stuff, I know I can attain anything. And it's at night before you go to sleep is when you do it. And it's really simple. You just visualize and vision it and imagine it and be there. Be there before you get there. And it's really amazing. So, but the thing that's more amazing than that is because we are these electromagnetic beings, an electromagnetic universe, and that the universe is alive, according to Wallace Wattles and all the other guys. And because we're these energy beings in an energy matrix, and all this stuff is illusory, it doesn't really exist. It just exists as resting states of energy. That, it makes sense. Your EEGs are pumping out ideas into this huge electromagnetic matrix, and it will manifest as physical things in this matrix. So if you want happiness, be happy before you go to bed. If you want toys, imagine having them, they'll come into your life. It happens all the time. I mean, both Pam and I do this stuff now, and it's just, it's no longer shocking as much as it's just expected. When you really want something, know what you want and why you want it. It's the why that really is the way to work. I just thought I'd throw that out there to your listeners and readers and viewers, because that's a big key in life. It really, really works.
Yeah, and it's different than goal setting. So I think that's really that's a really good tool for people to have that before you go to bed. It's finding bliss. So lots of people say bless you. I say bliss you. It's be blessed. And if you can figure out, it's you know thyself.
Here, have a little bliss over here. You can
have a little bliss. Exactly. But that self-created bliss is actually, people think it's an external thing too. And that's confusing. It's like, when I get the DeLorean, I'm going to be happy, right? It's nothing really to do with that. It's the journey along the way, right? Where you're going.
It's the journey. It's the fact that that was proof then that, wait a minute, I'm doing something. I didn't even know it at the time. I didn't know this until I came across Wattles' work and these other guys 20 years later. That's why that worked. We all do it to some degree without even knowing why we're doing it or how we're doing it. We're all creator gods. And in fact, he says something else that's very interesting. He says, I'm, the God and the Father and that stuff, is that we entities that can create like this are connected deeply to what we think is God as a Jesus of ourselves. Because Jesus didn't like the church. Everybody wears these crosses around, but I don't think Jesus really cared for the cross all that much, when you think about it. And, the idea here is that this connection is something we all have, and we can all do. We can all manifest with this energy, and we create a much better world. I mean, people worry about how crazy things are right now. Stop thinking about it. Take that minute of Zen, walk down the beach or walk down the block and just meditate. Just breathe deeply. Mr. Miyagi said, no breathe, no live. It's, you just got to kind of take a breath sometimes and step back and just say, wait a minute, why am I thinking this stuff? So I was out there in my garden this morning, and I was kind of going over this stuff in my mind. I'm going, this stuff exists because when I came into town 4 months ago, I decided I wanted a garden. I know what I'm going to do. I just powered through it. And now I have fruit and vegetables growing and fruits bearing. It's because we got to be proactive. It just doesn't happen. We're not so strong of beings. We just materialize out of our mind. Like, there it is. There's a car. You've got to be proactive. But when you have the idea, it's amazing how the things you then start focusing on will attain that goal. As goal setting does work, it's a coarser version of this imagining thing, but the imagining thing sets in motion the pathways to get the imagined thing.
Yeah. And I love this. So there's a distinction here as well that's important and again, I'm a farm girl. So it's like if you didn't actually go out and plant the garden and take care of the chickens and, help with crops, et cetera, there was no harvest. And so that was not a lay in bed and think about it all day. It was like, get your butt out of bed and throw on the rubber boots and go pull some weeds and know what's a weed versus a plant, know what we're trying to nurture that's perennials versus annuals. Again, I grew up in Alberta, Canada, and it's very cold here. So one of the challenges I think in the real world is that, a lot of people only grow food for 2 or 3 months of the year, and then they really feel like they're stuck. And so one of the things I want to encourage people to do is to check out the Nebraska guy who's growing things underground, but also check out, we have tower gardens that people can access. So you can get stuff that's already set up that you don't even actually need dirt for. So you can come to masteryourlife.ca for more information about that. And from a really credible company, I think right now, like this company's been around for 40 years. So it's well established and has good distribution channels, which I think is again a challenge for people to get materials right now. In the real world, they'll go, well, I want to do a tower garden or I want to do this thing, but I can't actually get the materials in the real world. So that's one hack. So yes. So can you talk about some of the methods that you use and some of your favorite things that you grow, August, and why?
We grow it all. And for a while, we were selling these fabric grow bags for the cannabis industry on Amazon. They sold like crazy, but the cost of bringing them from China was ridiculous. And now you can buy them from cheap in the United States. And I completely support, your own locally produced materials. We have to get our industries back. So I like those for a couple of reasons. I used to grow on the ground because you get the rototiller out there and till it up and grow on the ground. And you have that water and stuff. But there's gophers and moles and everything else in the ground. Yeah. So what I've done was and I'll send you a picture of this stuff. What it is, I use these pallets. Everybody has these wood shipping pallets that everybody throws away and wants to get rid of. I put 4 legs on them, get them up off the ground, and put my grow pots on these things. And I just use a regular potting mix with a little bit of peat moss because it keeps the pH kind of down because you need a lower pH to get the minerals to release properly. Some worm castings and some steer or cow manure for the composted nitrogens and stuff, and some fish emulsion every now and then. And that's what I use to grow with, because the fish is a really great mineralized nutrient nitrogen source. And then I just plant it. I mean, I bring up little pots. I bring up all my stuff from seed. Some things I'll buy from, tomato plants at the Home Depot or something. But for the most part, I bring them up from seed. I've collected these heirloom tomato seeds, and they came up from Austin, Texas when I moved out here. And then I transfer them to bigger pots and eventually these grow pots, and they grow like crazy. It's really simple. And it's you don't have the problem with the bugs. And I miss the worms a little bit, but I add worm castings. Okay. Right. So it's like, I get around that problem with that product. And if I had a bigger facility, I'd probably go on the ground if I really wanted to be big production. But I have enough that gives Pam and I the food we need during the year. And during this growing season, we're not buying any tomatoes. We're buying no more lettuce. We haven't bought any onions recently. We're getting squash. We're getting okra. We're getting all this stuff growing like crazy. We're getting our carrots coming in. We just have had a big crop of peas. And you just go out in the morning and water and pick the bugs off because we don't use pesticides. I use BT though. Okay, it's a bacterial natural pesticide that the worms eat, crystallize in their gut, and they die, but it's not toxic to humans or animals or wildlife. But for the most part, here's my pesticide right here. I go down and
your fingers, yeah.
Gets the damn worms right off. Right. And that's the easy part. And it gets you really closer to your plants, and you find out what's going on with them, and you get there with a magnifying glass, you find the little worms before they get big, and you get involved with nature. You got to get your hands dirty. You got to get time on earth. I mean, I really think there's more to farming than just making food. I think there's more to this whole electric field that the earth has. Yeah, I go out there in bare feet, because I can at this temperature, not in the wintertime when I was living in Indiana, for instance.
Right.
But you go out there and you get your hands dirty and you get, messy and you spray yourself off and take a shower afterwards, but you get earth. You have to be earthed. We were
right.
barefoot.
And this from the guy who worked for NASA, people. So, yeah, get on the earth and be with Mother Nature or with Gaia. The fun other thing I want to point out is that you said it's easy to do these things. I think it's easy if you've got some wisdom and you're willing to put in a bit of research. One of the opportunities, I'm so grateful that I have the opportunities to do these kinds of interviews, because then I can find out like other tips and tricks that other people are using or things that I've used in the past and gone, oh, this really worked well. We didn't use worm casings. We had a problem with the deer eating everything, around the yard. So one of the things that an old farming lady said, use those. She said use the worm casings, and that would actually help. And so we did that in the garden, and we didn't have much for a problem. And cayenne pepper spray.
Yeah.
Not on the deer, on the plants.
Exactly. But no, Van, I invented the first organic miticide. It was a peppermint geraniol mix that would suffocate the mites without hurting the plants or making them toxic. That was cool. But yeah, our backyard is fenced in. If I didn't, I would. I have a fence, some kind of deer fencing or something, because we've got wild animals. I mean, everybody does. You got raccoons, you got stuff that walk around. It's just the way it is.
Neighbors who like your
yeah, we got alligators.
like your garden.
Really, there's a pond just down the road. There's about an 8-foot alligator swimming around in there.
Right. Yes. Well, oh my goodness. Yes. We've been seeing those things on the news. Yes. Yeah. They're crazy. That would be a crazy thing to see out your back door.
Please don't pet the alligators.
Please don't feed the wildlife. That's awesome. That's awesome. So we've got about 5 minutes left. August, what are you working on currently and researching? I know you're working on the mitochondria stuff very in depth. Are you going to be doing a publication around mitochondria, or what should people look for from you?
Yeah, I'm working on a couple of books right now, but the one that's more relevant to what I've been so far is kind of flesh out the things that I brought up in neogenesis, because I do believe that the dry fasting and neogenesis represents the first try at an owner's guide for the human body. That if you follow a lot of the things that we're finding out and putting in these books, you're not going to get sick, you're going to stay younger, you're going to get rid of your toxins, you're not going to have a parasite load. We're looking for an extended lifespan, a radically extended lifespan. The idea is functional immortality, not everlastingness. That's just this pipe dream of pharaohs and stuff.
Yeah.
But the idea of ever presence, if you just don't have the things that knock you down and wear you out, who knows how long we can last? And that's the cool thing about it. Do we die in the bud? That's the thing. We have these genetics that get so smart, brains that get so smart and all this stuff. And then our bodies start wearing out and it drags us down. We get sick, we're tired, we're ready to go. And it's like, what happens when you're not ready to go? What happens if you live a couple 100 years, 250 years? What kind of knowledge would you have? What things would be more important then? What kind of a planet would we have? What kind of people would we have? I would like a leader that's 150 years old, that's been through everything, has been through the childbearing and the dating thing and the wealth generation, all that stuff, and he's gone past that stuff to an idea that we haven't even conceived yet about what it's like to be alive on this planet. I think it's within our grasp. I don't think it's impossible. I just think that we haven't understood that we have an eating and a sleeping cycle that hasn't been maximized yet. And a sleeping cycle can be extended with dry fasting. And who knows what'll happen. But, functional immortality is functionally ever present.
Right.
Here is the only time that is. There's no fourth dimension of time. Time is an invention of our mind to try and understand this moment of now and how it evolves as we evolve with it and through it with everything else. You can't be there. You're never there. You're only here. And it's like, when you think about what this means is, what if this was the key that we missed? I mean, we sleep. We all sleep. And that's why we're able to live as long as we do. I'm sure if you don't sleep, you don't live long at all. So it's just a matter of understanding these eating and sleeping cycles in a way that turns on an ability that we never have, which is to be young in an old body, to have young metabolism in an adult body. That's what I'm working on. So far, so good.
Very good. It's awesome work. So I want to invite people again to make notes about this episode. Think about how not only it could help you, but it could help your family. I was just at a Huntington's meeting last night, and many people have a huge movement disorder very early on. And so this information I think it's really vital for people to at least give something a go, because lots of people are symptomatic with things, but they don't necessarily know what the cause is. So oftentimes we're chasing the cause that we don't ever go, well, how do I just resolve it? So I don't feel that great. I don't really know what's causing my brain fog. There's lots of toxins that we can't even identify. There's some that we absolutely have volunteered for, along the span of our lifetime. So we've got all these things that have invaded our body, and we spend so much time going, I wonder what it is. I wonder what it is that's making me feel like this. Or I wonder what happened in the past that's, caused my trauma, and how am I going to heal that? And it's important when we talk about the now moment that you feel your feelings, though. It's not this not feeling things. If you actually feel like garbage, then notice that and then do something about it. So this tool was one of the things that this speaks to me. And I'm just going to show people a cover of the first book. Do you have the second book there on your side of things,
I
August?
don't have it handy now.
Okay, so this is the first book, the dry fasting book. I want people to pick that up, and I want to hear from you. Yeah,
just go to Amazon and type in August Dunning books, and it'll bring both up.
Absolutely, and that stuff will be in the show notes. And I want you guys to get back to us and tell us how it's going. Email us. We want to know, how are these tools working? Did it bring value to you in some way in your life? And if it did, then reach out and say thank you to August, for this work that he's done over the span of his life, and bringing it forward into the written form so that people can understand it and hold it in their hands and execute it, and then tell us how it went. Because that's the fun part too of this cycle, this communicating with each other and saying, you know what, I tried that thing that you suggested and it really went well. Or I tried that thing and man, I hit so many roadblocks that I had to abandon and then start again, 3 months later. But really, this is your own hero's journey. Master Your Life, Recovery Road, or about your own hero's journey. So we want to encourage people to take that and with us, and go, okay, well, how did that tool work? How do these tools work to help me to feel better? Or if it helped somebody else in your family to feel better, or in your community, whoever that is, then let us know, because we want to hear back from you. All right, everyone, that's all for us. August, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest. Once again, for those of you who didn't see the first episode, tune in.
My pleasure. It's always good to see you, Leaha.
Awesome. Everyone, love yourselves, love each other, mind your minds. That's all for us. Bye for now.
Thank you for being a part of our program today. Master Your Life is a presentation of Leaha Mattinson Enterprises, Inc. Join us next time on Master Your Life, helping you to discover the very best of you.